All right, hello. Really good to have you here and welcome to Digital Wellbeing Week. It has started. I'm very lucky today because I've got Liz Pealey from Pealey Consulting and I have got Sheree, the Director of Data and Automation at Share3, so my colleague. And I'm always excited, so it feels a little bit inauthentic, but I'm really excited about this session because I came to realise that we've been talking about Digital Wellbeing Week without fully focusing on a particular group that is massively affected by it, which is returning parents. And Liz, this is where you live, this is where you work. So why don't you take a moment just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your work, and then we'll take it from there.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you for having me. So I help organisations retain and support their returning parents or colleagues that are returning from parental leave through manager training sessions, because all the research and my own lived experience, the line manager is where it falls down generally.
Right.
And I also offer support, 6-week cohort support for the returners themselves to help them understand that shift in identity and kind of understand their sleep situation and just really prepare them, because returning to work after parental leave is an event that should be planned for. It's not just something that happens and you'll kind of find your feet and catch up.
Yeah.
Some people do, and that's great, but I think it probably involves a lot more effort than is maybe kind of visible to everyone else.
Well, it's been a long time. I've got a 15-year-old son, so this is like history for me. And I remember not having anything like that when I introduced myself to motherhood. I don't know what the expression is when I had my boy. But Sheree, you're in it. You are in the thick of things. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your role and about the fact that you are indeed currently a returner to work.
I am, although 3 years feels like a long time. But so as Philippa said, I work alongside her at Share3, Director of Automation and Data. So just get stuck in the nitty gritty. I get stuff done for the clients, setting up the workflows and getting all the data where it should be. And yeah, I'm a bit of a geek. I love an Excel spreadsheet and just getting right in there. So that's where my heart lies work-wise. But yes, I have 3-year-old twins. And it's been a journey. It's been crazy. So I'm so excited to have this conversation, to hear all sort of your views on things, Liz, and what your experience is. Because yeah, we're just getting through it day by day.
I mean, stop for drama. Twins, two of them at the same time.
And at 3.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you're working hard, right? I know you are, but I'm going to ask the question.
Yeah.
And I think that as far as digital well-being is concerned, don't know if you feel the same, but the conversation seems to generally be about screen time. It doesn't seem to be about very specifically what about the combination of motherhood and work. Now, Liz, you have introduced me to the word that I still struggle to pronounce, matrescence. Matrescence. Tell me about this. I love the word.
So I was going to jump in when you said that you introduced yourself to motherhood. When you went through matrescence, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
I apologise, this is my kind of soapbox warning, this is where we get out. But I have a real bee in my bonnet about how when children develop into adults through adolescence, they're given so much grace to have stupid hair and try out weird clothes and try out different identities and be a bit moody. And that's all fine, we give them a lot of grace to do that. I'm like, oh, they're just a moody teenager, it's fine. And yet when women become mothers in the process of matrescence, for fathers it's patrescence, the same level of grace isn't given. And particularly in the context of Digital Wellbeing Week, there are so many expectations on women anyway, but particularly in the digital sphere, you should have a Pinterest for perfect house. It should all be beige and have you met children? They're not going to keep anything beige.
Very unlikely, exactly. And so the pressures that happen, you're not really prepared for all of them. No. There's a little bit of knowing what's coming, just because you've got this great big belly and something's coming. So there's not a sense of surprise, but there's so many ways in which the surprises hit you way after the fact. What were some of the biggest surprises for your own well-being, Sheree? What was the thing that you didn't know was going to happen?
Everyone spoke about mum guilt before I became a mum, but I
Right.
thought that's like when they're older. But it was immediately on my return to work. And I was in a very unique situation where I worked completely from home, but I've had twins and I was breastfeeding. So my mum was amazing and would come in so I could work. But I could hear them, like they might have bumped or something, and they were crying. And gosh, I just wanted to go and be with them. But I knew that I couldn't just walk out of my Teams meeting or just couldn't walk away from my work. So it was such a pull of that mum guilt. But even when sort of they went on to childcare, it was that, right, I know I need to work, so I need to provide for my family, but I should be there with the kids. It was just this pull, and I just didn't expect that because I thought mum guilt come years down the line when you had to say to your 3-year-old, no, you can't have an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was a real shock for me, that pull.
Wow. And Liz, what are your clients finding, and what did you find?
Very, very similar. It was instant for me. I'll be completely transparent. I used to drop my son off at nursery and cry in the car park for 10 minutes and then sort of have to put yourself together and drive to work and be that version of yourself. And it's a very difficult thing to do, that kind of, I always almost describe it as whiplash, where you're like, I am this woman sobbing in my car because they've literally had to peel my son's fingers off my shirt so that I can drop him off. And then you're supposed to walk into a board meeting or present to a bunch of stakeholders. And you can't help but think, who cares what colour green it is? Why, like, none of this matters anymore. I want to be with my little boy.
Yeah. And the thing I found, and I can still remember so clearly, is what was this expectation that I move from the most emotional breadth of experience that I could ever possibly have. Like, my son brought out such depth of emotions, and it was a full human experience, to then go into just stuff that seemingly meant nothing. And also, really importantly, do not show those emotions, like keep them down. It's a real contradiction in what we're being asked to do. So it's a major life transition then. Liz, how well do you think employers are dealing with it? Let's get to the brass tacks of it. Are we in a good position? Are we improving?
I think employers generally fall into kind of 3 camps. There are and again, the role typically falls to a line manager. So it's not, you might have an organisation that's doing amazing things and got great principles in place, but ultimately it falls down to your line manager experience. And you either get a line manager who's great and that's brilliant, or you get a line manager who is like so not like unsure of your capability now, that they just want to micromanage you and they want to kind of be in your business all the time, and you just want them to go away so you can get on with it, because that ultimately is a sign that they don't trust you, right? So or the third camp is you get the people that are just so scared to say the wrong thing that they just completely leave you alone. And Philippa, if you forgive me, I'll tell you the story again. Like the one woman that I worked with, she her whole team was made redundant when she was on maternity leave. So she came back she had a completely different team of 6 that she had to line manage, a completely different area of the business, different subject matter expertise, different relationships and stakeholders to build. And she had a new line manager who she'd never met before. They Teams messaged and had emails and whatever, but it was 8 weeks until they had a one-to-one. And the first thing he said to her was, "I'm sorry it's taken so long. I just didn't know what to say to you. My wife said I should put some time in."
Which, to be fair, is good advice. But yeah, that shows.
I mean, it's a shame we don't all have that wife, right?
Yeah, 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
And just be left not knowing, not get any context, any way of knowing what the plan is, no strategy guidance, no acknowledgement of this massive life transition.
Yeah. And it's not, I think people are worried, aren't they, of saying that, like, I genuinely don't think anyone wakes up in the morning. I don't think he woke up for 8 weeks thinking, do you know what, I'm going to be a terrible manager and I'm just going to ignore this woman for 8 weeks.
No, I agree.
I genuinely don't think that happened. I think people are just so scared of saying the wrong thing that they just don't say anything at all. And that silence in itself then starts to speak for you. And then that's when you get into a really kind of disengaged situation. So all of the things that we talk about in terms of that return transition to work, a lot of it generally is just good management skills.
Right.
But also there's just such a massive knock-on effect to culture and engagement. And you know, there's loads of stats out there about how your negotiation skills under pressure, your time management, your priority skills, all of these really core leadership skills really develop and excel over, like when you go through matrescence.
Yeah.
I imagine twofold when you've got two at the same time.
Well, let's talk about that, because you mentioned capability, you mentioned the fact that these skills this is the perfect time in our lives to build these incredible skills that are meaningful for companies. So, Sheree, do you feel maxi skilled now? Like, how does this land, this idea that you are gaining all these incredible skills from motherhood?
I don't know that I'm the right person to answer that. I just feel like I've been surviving for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that says a lot. I
Yeah.
think that that's exactly the position we're in. You don't feel it. It's not acknowledged at organizational level half the time. But every single day that you're dealing with this new role, this new identity, you're being skilled.
Yeah. But the one thing that I related to that we were talking about earlier, I felt like this level of like boundaries for me coming in, because before I've just worked and worked and worked because it didn't matter. But like you said about, I don't care what colour grey it is, for me it was, sorry, none of this really matters. So at the end of the day is the end of my day. My holiday, that's my holiday. And even now I'm very resolute in that. And we've got the environment that we're so blessed that it works for us. But I know not a lot of people do have that, but I am very firm on that now. My husband was like, oh, I should take my work phone. And I'm like, no, this is our time with the kids. So I suppose that defiance has come up in me. And maybe long-term negotiation skills, because negotiating with a 3-year-old is
that's definitely a skill. But you can totally translate that to like one of the clients that you're working with. If they're asking for something ridiculous, because you've had the practice in holding that boundary for your own personal space and your family time, that practice develops that skill, which means you can totally use that in your professional life.
Yeah, it's very
for
true.
sure. It's making me think of asking the question then. I completely relate to the idea that there was nothing more important than being with my son. When he was born, everything else just kind of melted away in like a little cliche, and I knew what was important. But then how do we gain purpose at work when we're making that transition back to work? What is it that gives us what we need to be involved in work, or are we asking too much of ourselves?
Can I dive in on that one? So I think there's a couple of things in there. So your last comment around, are we asking too much of ourselves? This idea that women or anyone can have it all is a fallacy. You can't have it all. Something has to give, because our capacity, our energy, whatever you want to call it, is finite. And at this stage in our lives, when we've got young ones, they should take up a lot of that energy. That's why we had them. So that was the first thing. Sorry, that was a little bit ranty as well.
No, that was so on point, because I completely agree. I think our priorities are right. That's not to throw shade at anyone who has different priorities. It's
completely not. Everyone makes that choice, don't they? And it's a very personal choice, and you know, everyone's choice is their own. That's fine. The other thing that you mentioned about how do you kind of get it all right, I think you have to kind of think about it as a hierarchy of needs. So if you've got the basics right and you feel safe and you feel comfortable, say in your family life, because you've got people around you, you've got the village to help you, your mum's helping you out on days, even though you can kind of hear it, you've got some help around, you're not on your own, you've got a supportive work environment, then once you've kind of got the basics, then all the other stuff builds on that. But if you're in an environment where you're returning and you have no idea what the priorities are because no one's bothered to talk to you for 8 weeks, how are you supposed to use all of those extra skills that you've gained and do all of those brilliant things that you are super capable of you can't do it because your nervous system is screaming like something's not safe.
Yeah. And then it really matters what environment you're going back into, because if the organization has strong values, strong sense of purpose, and has all the strategy in place and the communication channels in place for that to land, people are going to actually find that they embed themselves back into the workplace, hopefully, in a manageable way. But it's going to amplify the stress of those systems not being in place. If you're going into a workplace that's not supporting you because it can't support itself, we're in trouble.
Completely. And the data says that if you don't come into that supportive environment, all of those skills that you've developed that have become amplified, they go into your competitors' pipeline because they leave.
Yeah, of course they do. Absolutely. So what are the alternatives for people who are leaving organizations because they're not being supported? Are we seeing an awful lot of new mothers building businesses?
Hopefully, there's loads of things out there that help women build new businesses. I think a lot of the time, again, talking about that kind of hierarchy of needs, a lot of people want a regular salary. They want that stability. They want to earn enough to get tax-free childcare. Let's be practical about this.
Yeah.
But we know that between 23 and 27% of women leave a workplace within 12 months because of their return. And so it's not things. I've just published an article, actually, it's on my website, that goes into this in a little bit more detail. But the data says it's not about things like flexibility or having the right equipment or all of those kind of things that you may expect.
Yeah.
Specifically, 37% of people cited it was that return experience as the reason why they left.
Right. So, Sheree, how would you kind of rate your experience of returning to work? What worked, what didn't? What have you had to kind of work your way through? We've got the luxury of being able to say, well, we created a business because all three of us, Lucy, Sheree, myself, we needed to create an environment we could thrive in. So we've had this kind of luxury, but we won't have got it all completely right either. So what kind of things worked? What kind of things do you think need a little bit of negotiation with your team?
Well, I think what you were saying there touches on the fact that it was still hard. I could still hear the kids and all of the things that made it tricky. But the difference was I had such a supportive group around me. Well, our morning meetings, and Philippa knows this all too well, we have like a mental health check-in before we do anything. And we normally take it in turns. Normally there's one of us having a bad morning and then they take the floor for a bit. But we're all so supported in that. And it's not having to put a face on and say, I was just crying at school before drop off and all of that. It was just we could come as we were. And then if we needed to pick up for other people and take on some of their workload so they can just sort of deal with what's urgent for them. And that was the real difference for me. But I know that is not the story for everyone. And that is why we built Share 3 ultimately, so we could create an environment that we could feel safe in and thrive.
Yeah, that's why I wonder. Maybe they're all hopefully they're going to start their own businesses, these leavers, and do it right. Excellent.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about the technology for a moment then. Technology obviously is something that organizations are obsessed with. The idea of having the right tech in place will solve all of your problems is prevalent. Now, Sheree, you moved into an environment where we work almost exclusively remotely. Now, is that a help or a hinder?
Bigger picture, definitely a help, because I can do school pickup. I can be around. I work from home. I can chuck a wash load in at some point if I need to. Like, the small things have made a huge difference. Or if I've got one of them off sick, I can be here and get my work done around being a mum. So for me, that has been really helpful. But I know not for everyone. I've got friends that would much rather go to the office because for them, that's the switch between being a mum and being in work mode now. And that helps them and having that more social environment. I'm an introvert, so I'll sit at home all day on my own. I'm quite happy.
And Liz, what do you reckon about this then? Is tech the answer? Are we able to improve the experience through technology? It's only part of the puzzle.
Oh, it's definitely only part of the puzzle. And I think exactly to Sheree's point, it's a very personal thing. So when you have a returner going back into the workplace, don't make any assumptions. There is loads of data out there that says that working from home is better for working parents. And that is exactly because you can put a wash on, or if your kid's homesick, and that's brilliant. But it's also a personal choice, exactly to your friend's point. If they want to be in a workplace environment and that mentally helps them switch off so that they can be a present parent and be a present employee because they've got that switch time, great. I'm also an introvert, and I don't like wasting time commute is exactly that for me, a waste of time and effort and energy and carbon and all of that other stuff. So I would much prefer to work from home. That's why I've set up a business that predominantly I work from home and I help my clients remotely. But it also gives me greater reach. I can help more people from more locations doing it that way too.
And Sheree and I had a chat just before this, so we kind of looked a bit sheepish because we realised it really depends on what we're talking about. So working remotely and being available on Teams, yes, it's more flexible, but flexibility can either be something that works for your productivity, i.e. you can get more done, at the cost of your well-being. So that's one of those little tensions that I think is really worth us acknowledging. Sometimes, yes, we can juggle and do a Teams meeting while we're also trying to look after a sick child, or yes, we can jump on a Teams meeting at 3, even though we know we've got to run out the door in 15 minutes, but why not? But at what cost? That's really extracting an awful lot of our mental energy. What are your thoughts on that one?
Again, I think you're completely right in that it's a personal thing, and there is this culture, isn't there, particularly at the moment, where everyone's expected to always be on all the time.
Yeah.
And I think finding your own personal way to kind of relax and de-stress and just chill out, I think that's something that people should probably prioritize more than they actually do.
Sure.
So what might work for you to chill out might not work for me, and again, that's why it's so important to have really open and honest conversations and have relationships with the people that you work with where you're feeling safe enough that you can have those conversations and you can share, what, I'm having a bit of a pants day today. I want to just sit in a dark room and I'm going to have the duvet over my head and my laptop, and I'm just going to turn the Teams pings off for a bit and I'll catch up later.
Yeah.
If that works for you and your business and ultimately your productivity isn't impacted by that, what's wrong with that? Who cares that you're working a different pattern to the typical 9 to 5?
Well,
Another
yeah, go on. Now I've got a point to come back to on that one, but yeah, go on.
Henry Ford invented the 5-day working week 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason it was celebrated was because before that, we worked 6 days a week. We need to evolve the way that we're working because society is not the same as it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, completely agree. There's some really good evidence to suggest that a 4-day week can be achieved quite effectively without losing productivity. Lots and lots of great research on that I'll connect to the comments when we publish this. But I was going to say, I think that one of the most important things that organizations can do is just be really clear with their expectations. Like have that conversation where we are going to need you by to always work up till 3 so that we know where the stop points are, or our busiest day is going to be Monday and Tuesday, but there's flex to be had on the kind of Thursday Friday area. I think it's about policy, isn't it? I feel like we're getting to the bit where we talk about have a policy.
And I think that changes, doesn't it, depending on the size of the organisation? Because you guys are beautifully, perfectly sized, small and sweet. Whereas large organisations, I think it becomes, they implement policy because they want fairness, but then fairness doesn't necessarily equal equity.
Yeah.
And there's a massive difference between the two.
Yeah. I think so too. I think it's time for us to really review how we can support our clients to create really effective return to work policies. Now, you've got this great program that you're doing that actually works with the individuals returning to work. And what's your advice to organisations then for those returners? I mean, we wouldn't want them to ruin all your hard work. So, what's the advice that you give to organisations supporting your program?
Get all of your returners to come on my program.
Oh yeah, actually, that makes
that
sense.
is the advice. But genuinely, like, have a space where you can have those honest conversations about what the individual needs, what their preference is, and be aware that it's not a once and done thing. So there's a lot of articles, but it's quite topical at the moment, around kind of people having a wellbeing policy and saying that they've got inclusion policies and being like, yep, tick, I've got that inclusion policy done, right, I'm going to turn around and ignore that for the rest of the time. That's not really how it works, because then the people who do feel that they don't quite fit in the neurotypical or normal box, they do feel excluded. But it says we've got an inclusion policy, so I feel even worse now. And I think just reframing that as being a consistent evolving thing, because as you all know with children, what works for you one day is not necessarily going to work the next. You know, they absolutely love bananas one day and then can't stand them the next, just after you've bought 20 from the local shop.
Yeah, definitely. And let's also talk, because that is true, our days aren't consistent. That's the one thing about parenthood that you can guarantee it's not going to be consistent. You can't predict what will happen. So can we talk about sleep deprivation? Let's talk about that. Sheree, first of all, I'll come to you. How's your sleep been?
Oh, deprived? No. We have been about they're 3, as I've said multiple times. So some nights are great and others aren't. And it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's not as good as it could be. So,
Right.
yeah.
And how do you think that affects you generally? I mean, Liz, I know you're chomping at the bit. I know you've got good stuff, but I mean, just from a personal perspective, what does that do to your ability to get the day done?
Yeah, I find everything harder when I've not had sleep. I'm very aware. I've read all the books about sleep and how important it is, and that's great. But are these people going to come and do everything else for me? So it's a juggle. But then I think this is on me a little bit, because I feel like the environment we work within, if I said to you, well, I need to go for a nap for half an hour, everyone would be like, do it. Yes, great. But I don't do it. So that's on me.
Oh, well, Liz, I know you've got stuff on this. Right, jump on in and tell us how much sleep deprivation is like the topic here.
It's the absolute priority, and it's why I think returning to work is an operational risk if you don't absolutely look at that sleep situation. So there's data from Harvard that says if you're up at 3 a.m. with a baby, or for whatever reason you're up at 3 a.m. and you're still catching up on work at 8 p.m., you're at the same cognitive impairment as at the UK drink drive limit. And we know that quite a lot of people will do that, won't they? They'll get up early with the baby, they'll sort all their stuff out, and they'll still be making business critical decisions at 8 p.m, desperately trying to catch up before they do it all again. And so the impairment, that stat in itself, is just absolutely shocking, because you wouldn't let your colleagues or your CEOs or whoever walk into the office or the boardroom legally drunk, and yet that's what we quite frequently ask parents to do, because there's no flex. And I totally get your point, Sheree, about you could ask for a nap, and I don't think it's a culture within your organisation, because obviously you're very supportive of each other. I think it's a wider cultural piece, and for me it hinges around this word should. I should carry on. I shouldn't go for a nap, because that's not what professional people do. Should needs to be abolished, because what works for someone does not necessarily work for someone else. And this pressure, I feel like the word should just literally drowns people.
Yeah, I agree. And that's just made me think of taking this all the way into social media. I think it's well worth us talking about that, because it ties into the technology that is affecting us during our life transitions. And oh my goodness, motherhood, that is a topic that social media just can't leave alone. So the pressures, I mean, I'm pretty sure that we're supposed to feel really supported. Again, Sheree and I were chatting about this. It's supposed to be a lovely community, and I'm sure there is, but it seems to be also a place where you can be crushed with judgment and pressure. So, and I think that's the cultural piece, isn't it? This idea of what we should and shouldn't be. I don't know, Sheree, any thoughts on social media? I know that you definitely have moments of doubt about it all.
Yeah, social media and I are not friends. I frequently deactivate all my accounts and disappear off the face of the earth, and because although I know we shouldn't compare ourselves, I just do. You start seeing all these things, and so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing that, and I just find it really hard to not then start to judge the choices I've made and the things I've done. And then it comes up for me, oh, well, that would be easier if I only had one. And it's like, it just doesn't help me because that's not my reality. So I know I'm better off not consuming any of it at all.
Yeah.
I find that really funny that you'd be better if you just had one. Well, what are you going to do with the other one?
Exactly.
It's so
It's not an option.
unhelpful. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that there's anybody who is left unscathed. I only have one child, and of course I've let down the entire team because how's he going to survive without siblings? And aren't only children weird? And so I don't think anyone comes out of this unscathed. We all seem to be targeted.
Completely. There's always something you shouldn't do, and it starts right from the word go. I think it's interesting, Sheree, you mentioned that mum guilt coming on a lot earlier than you expected. I think it's because that should pressure comes on straight away. You should breastfeed. You're still breastfeeding. You're holding your baby. Oh, you're making a rod for your own back. All of these rules about what you should and shouldn't do go away.
Yeah. And then you've got the opposite rule as well. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I wonder, I don't think that the working environment that we are in is in any way different. I think it amplifies just general society pressures. This idea that if I need to go and pick up my son, I'm somehow neglecting my work. So why do the women with children get the time off? I can assure you, it's not time off. It's extremely productive. These are the children that are going to be keeping society alive, and I can't just leave him wandering around his school. I've got to pick him up. I've got to feed him. Yeah. So it's a service to society. You don't mean to get on my soapbox, but it's a service to society, because we keep
someone's going to call Childline as soon as you don't.
Exactly. So what do we need people to fully understand from this topic then? What is the way that we can keep this positive and move forward in healthy ways? Like, what does it take?
I think it is just about that, being a little bit, allowing everyone to be a little bit more vulnerable and honest about their situation. You're so right, Sheree, when you said that, kind of putting this mask on, just that in itself, wearing a mask, whether it's because you're neurodivergent or whether it's because you're just generally trying to pretend that you're okay so that you can function in your work environment, that is going to exhaust you on top of already being exhausted to the legal drink drive limit. None of that is helpful. So we need to flip it on its head and kind of create this culture where it's okay to say, do you know what, I had a terrible night's sleep. I've looked through my diary and I can do these couple of meetings, and then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to do the rest of my meetings, and I'm going to make sure that I get everything done because I want to be productive and I want to flex all of these amazing, incredible skills that I've just developed. But I want to do it on my own schedule that's not arbitrarily dictated by a dude 100 years ago.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds so revolutionary. Basically, I'll get the work done and I'll figure it out along the way. And there's a lot of trust in that, isn't there?
Exactly.
But I think
and that's where it often falls down.
Yeah, and the vulnerability is so important. Now, let me just twist us to a completely different topic, as it were. let's talk about the dads. Now, I don't want to talk for them. That's not our role in here because we're not them. But I mean, they are again not left unscathed. How is this return to work different from our perspectives, or from what we know? Again, not speaking for them. For the dads.
I think the sleep element with dads is real as well,
Yeah.
because particularly if men only get 2 weeks paternity leave,
Yeah.
some people don't even get that. The baby's in the room with you, they're still having night feeds at that age. Their sleep's going to be disrupted, and that is obviously going to have an operational risk if it's not managed in the right way. And a lot of the clients that I work with are office based, but everyone who has a child, whatever their role is, might be warehouse or manual machinery, all of that, there is an operational risk to not having enough sleep. So that's a real key thing that absolutely impacts everyone. And I do think, and again, not speaking for men because I'm not one, but there is still that patricide identity shift. Like, you go from being a relatively free person to being a dad. You have to be around for feeds, you have to think about the schedule, you can't just both go out to the pub on an evening, someone has to be at home with the baby. So there are shifts that absolutely impact men as well, but I think certainly from the people that I've spoken to, that kind of sleep element is definitely the biggest one, or the one that comes up more and more.
Right. And what about you, Sheree? Because I'm just suddenly aware that I need to acknowledge that this will be nuanced as to whether you are with or without your partner. So it will be a very different world for those people whose relationships are co-parenting and those who are parenting together. What's your spin on this, Sheree? Let's talk about the dads.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, because I don't suppose I thought much about it. But when I reflect, I can see how it affected my husband. He had no choice but to get up. So I was on leave, so I would have loved to do it all myself, but I couldn't because there was two of them. So he had to be up, and there was a real shift with him that he changed, and he just started to find everything a bit harder, as you do when you have children. But reflected now, it was probably because he was sleep deprived, but still having to get up, drive an hour to work, do a full day. He's in a managerial position, drive home again, and then come home to me needing help. So it's taxing.
Yeah.
Might have to give him a little cuddle tonight and say thanks for all you did back then.
Exactly. And then we've got the other side of things where maybe you don't have that support, but there is possibly another person out there, the father who's also going through their own things. And a lot of the time you have to manage that as well, that it affects you and your schedule and how you're able to work. And there's a lot to consider, isn't it? It brings me back very much to the same question. Have we benefited from the fact that we have this cool tech now? Like, we've got our phones. I can communicate with my son's dad, for example, over the phone, and that's done fairly quickly and painlessly. We've got Teams meetings, so we can multitask-ish. Not sure that's kind of more extractive than supportive some of the times. It's complicated, isn't it?
It is complicated, and there are apps out there for tracking the schedules, which can be helpful. Particularly if you're not together, you can share an app and see what the schedule is, so everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's there is probably two sides to these apps, where yes, they can be helpful, they can help you recognize patterns, but they can also become the next obsession. And we fell asleep 5 minutes after he was supposed to, what are we going to do? Like, they need to be used with a little bit of perspective.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Some of the new tech that I didn't have when my son was a baby would terrify me now.
Yeah.
And that was my experience. I had these apps because it was really hard to keep track of who ate when and who needed a nappy change and all of that. And I had these apps, but then it becomes something else on my to-do list. Oh, have I recorded that? And is it in the app? And there was one day a friend of mine said, oh, that baby's a bit grizzly. Like, what does she need? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I'll look at the app. And she's just lovingly said to me, you're her mum. What does she need? And I deleted the apps that day because it was like just making me lose touch with my maternal instincts to know what they needed. So for me, but then I've got a different brain to some people. So other people, that might be what they need. But for me, that was just another pressure. Didn't help me. I sort of lost touch with my instincts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new tech involved, particularly around baby sleep as well, to kind of monitor sleep and that sort of thing. But I have a real worry bear, and again, Lullaby Trust is absolutely the gold standard in advice here, but I think they would agree that all of the kind of monitoring apps, they're not, like, they only alert you when there's already been a problem. And so making sure your sleep environment is safe and everything is set up in the correct way. You've got a clear bed, no toys in there. It's hard at this time of year to make sure it's the right temperature, but as much as you can, have that room cooled down to 20 degrees. This isn't a should, that's an impossible thing to get to, but this is SID's safe sleep advice. So you have to do everything you can to make sure that your baby is in a safe sleep environment, and don't just buy all of these apps that are going to alert you when something has already happened.
Right.
Make sure you've got the basics right, and that can really help you.
Well, I know you won't have known it, but you've segued so beautifully into the last bit that I'd like us to cover, which is in the keynote that I did this morning. I mentioned how we seem to be obsessed with measuring everything, and this really speaks to this conversation. Apps are all about measuring things so that you can gain this wisdom that you wouldn't have yourself, apparently. And there's so many things that are measured at work. We've got classic KPIs. I'm not aware of any strong KPIs for returners to work. I'm not aware of that.
So the KPIs that I tend to use are things around attendance. So you will find that sickness leave increases if that maternity transition hasn't been managed in the right way.
Right, that
you
makes
are
sense.
naturally, to a degree, going to have more absence days, because if nursery rings you up and say your kid's got hand, foot and mouth, which, let's be honest, until you became a mother you were like, well, that's an animal disease, what on earth is happening? If that happens, you're going to have to leave, but you need to have that plan in place. You need to have had that conversation with your line manager in that instance. So attendance is absolutely one. Attrition obviously is one, but that's kind of a longer term one, because the effects, though the majority is within the first 12 months, often, the first 3 years in employment, that's when the kind of onboarding support has kind of leveled off and you're left with the pressures to do the job. And if you're also going through that parental transition as well at the same time, you've just not got the support there. So attendance and retention are by far the key ones. But if your company has a colleague engagement survey, you are probably asking some engagement questions anyway, and you might get the measurement from that. Or depending on the size of the organisation, if you've got the flexibility to add in a question that's relevant to those specific people, ask the question, because you're not going to find out otherwise.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm dangerously close to stating that cliche of it's all about communication, but we all know it is. But then if we were trying to measure this being successful, what would a new parent returning to work look like? What would be the signs?
The signs would be that they would be happy and thriving in their role 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year afterwards.
Even if they're knackered?
Absolutely, because even if you're knackered, you can still use all of your brand new, super brilliant skills.
That is true.
There's no magic pill or no course that you can go on. Like Sheree already alluded to it. You can't have perfect sleep every day. It doesn't happen. My son slept brilliantly last night, but the night before it was terrible. It's not consistent, and I think celebrating the wins is fantastic. And so a win would be that a returning parent is thriving in their role. They're given that extra stretch because their line manager's not scared to talk to them about what the future looks like. They're in a real environment where they're using all of their brilliant new skills. They're managing their situation at home, be it a sleep situation or twins up all the time situation.
Yeah.
there are measurements where the colleague has remained in the organisation, they're not taking excessive absence days, and they're content and thriving and using all of their brilliant new skills.
Yeah, that sounds it. So Sheree, how do you know? Like, you must feel different when you know things are going well. It's always hard. I don't want anyone to go away from this and go, all right, so if we do it well, it will be easy for them. No. It's going to be hard. But what makes you know that it's going to be okay? And when do you feel overwhelmed?
I think for me, it is knowing the clear what's needed of me. So if I'm quite good at this in our meetings at steering us, like, so we're saying like, oh, we need to do this and this and this. I always have to bring us back to no, what are you asking of me here? Like, I need to know. And if it's vague, I can fall into the trap of worrying about it all weekend and being like, oh, okay, do I need to do 100 things or one thing? And for me, it's that clarity of knowing exactly what is expected of me. Because then if I know what it is, if I can meet that, great. And if I can't, I can say, look, the deadline's coming up. I need some help. So I think clarity is the biggest one for me.
Yeah. I think it's very, very clear that as long as the organization is paying attention, so they have a plan, have a conversation, and learn as you go, literally adapt as you experience more and more parents returning to work. Liz, leave us with the most important message that can support parents returning to work.
For organisations and for line managers in particular, listen to your returner. And that might not be just what they say. It's having that real emotional intelligence to see that they're on a call with you and they're masking their ass off, or they're on a call with you and they're, oh yeah, whatever. That immediate disengagement needs addressing, and do not think of it as their problem. Because, like I said, no one wakes up in the morning and thinks, do you know what, I'm going to be really terrible today at my job. There is always a reason, and think about the environment, think about what's going on, but just listen to your returner.
I think this is a moment for managers to go, this is my moment to shine, because it's really calling up your managerial skills. This is your moment. This is what you've trained for. We hope that they've been trained for it.
And that might be the problem, that a lot of managers don't get any training or support whatsoever.
I know, and I feel like there's a part 2 coming on that one for sure. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I really feel like it's useful. This really feels like a conversation that can bring something valuable to our viewers and as part of Digital Wellbeing Week. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And what we'll do is we'll put any details of your program in when we upload this to YouTube and put it out on our socials this afternoon. But yeah, I think we need to carry this on. There's so much to talk about. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Sheree, for all of your personal experiences. And I'm glad to hear that there's hope.
No, thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you for having me. It's been great chatting to you both.
Thanks very much. Speak soon.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.